Discussing with respect to regional rural banks. Okay, as name itself tells us or explains us why these banks are in working, for what main purpose they are working. So these banks have set up with a view to reach rural region people in order to provide the financial assistance. Okay, so these banks are popularly known as Grameen Bank. Okay, so this is a bank started since the establishment of banking sector in India. So it is operating specially for the rural and suburban background people. Okay, see, it is restricted. The area of operation is limited to few districts and region of a state. Okay, this is these especially these banks are only restricted to the rural regions. These are you don't see these banks established much in any urban areas. You always see these banks established in suburban and rural areas, because these banks have started or established in order to make sure we reach regional or rural area people. The main focus of these banks are towards the agriculture sector and small scale industries and small entrepreneurs and small artisans who are in need in terms of finance. Uh, Gradually they raised in terms of trade. First of all, these banks have established with the perspective of no profit making concept. So these banks were working only in order to provide the assistance in terms of finance to the people who are actually in need, in terms of who are actually the poorer section was focused in terms of regional rural banking system. Okay, so the first how they came into existence is in the year 1975. Firstly, this is the how the regional rural bank came into an existence is in the year 1975 there was a Sri M. Narsimham committee was created, who was an additional secretary, Minister of Finance, to review the flow of institutional credit, especially to the weaker section of the community. So this bank, the government has felt there is some, we have, we have a system of public sector banks, we have a system of private sector banks, but somewhere, government felt that rural regions are not able to reach with what expected financial assistance has to be given to them. So somewhere they felt if with that concept, the government has constituted a working group under Narsimham Group, which is named as Narsimham Group Committee, okay, to review the flow of institutional credit, especially to the weaker sections of our community. Okay, so the group that regional and functional gaps, the group felt after the research or after the study of the necessity of finance or the flow of credit which is required in the rural areas. The group felt that the regional and functional gaps in rural area could be adequately met within a reasonable period unless a new type of institution suitable to the needs of areas was set up. So this Narsimham committee is so if like we have to start off with any of the things, first we need to frame a committee and then we need to have a certain research on that what is required and that is what is not required. So whether what is the problem, why we are not able to reach the rural areas or the suburban areas, that in terms of financial assistance. So it made us, committee has suggested government, until unless we don't have the separate institutions who only focus on rural areas, then we are not able to reach or we not able to give in financial assistance to the rural areas. So the by this, they submitted a report on the Narsimham committee, which we stated the committee was framed in order to get the feedback that why we are not able to reach or why the rural areas are not able to reach the financial assistance what they are actually needed or has to be what they are expected to get the assistance. So the committee stated until unless we do not have this special setups or different institution being set up to work or to only focus on rural areas, So then they have submitted their report on 30th July 1975. So with that, what government has passed, a temporary law which we called ordinance. Okay, so they have passed an ordinance in the year 1975. Okay, in order to establish banks as RRBs. So with that ordinance, there was, first bank of RRB was established in Indian banking system. Later on, see if any ordinance is, a temporary law passed by an government. So okay, so that law is only what we say valid for say 6 months or to say 1 month. So that law has to be now has made an act. So later in the 1976, this law was, replaced by RRB's Act 1976. So this is how the RRBs came into. See, RRB started functioning in the year 1975 itself with the with an ordinance. Okay, in the 1975 on the basis of Narsimhamam Committee formed in the year 1975. So then in the year 1976, RRB Act came into an existence where the first 5 RRBs were established on the 2nd October 1975. See, as I discussed, on the basis on the report of Narsimham Committee, the RRBs were already created or established in the year 1975, but later on the ordinance was created as an act in the year 1976. So this is how the regional rural banks came into an existence. Okay, so yeah, so now our RRBs are regulated by NABARD. Okay, so this is, we will be discussing as part of NABARD, and we'll go in detail with respect to NABARD. Okay, in as a non-financial non-banking financial institutions. Okay, see, NABARD was established in the year 1982. This bank was established, this institution was established in order to focus on the same rural areas. Okay, rural financing or rural credit concept. It was main created on, financing the rural regions. So whatever or however, whatever the number of RRBs exists in the system of India, it has to be regulated under NABARD. Okay, so we all know that our banking industry is regulated by RBI. There's no other concept in that. So it is, every banks come under RBI itself after its establishment, but especially rural banks, their supervisory, their assistance, everything is maintained by NABARD. Okay, even it has a control of RBI as well, but this is mainly regulated, or in the sense, or it's supervised, or the system of RRBs are supervised, and the functioning of RRBs are controlled, and the supervisory functions are performed by NABARD for all the RRBs existing in India. So this is how the RRBs works. And when coming back to the capital structure, see, public sector banking is the banks which are capital funded by the capital is funded by government. The minimum 50% stakeholders are government in public sector banks. Whereas when we talk about private sector banks, we have the maximum investment of capital is with respect to the private investors. So if you're talking about the capital structure of RRB, so how they work, or who is the one who funds RRBs. So as with the slide, you guys have understood that what is the capital structure of RRBs. So RRBs are mainly owned and funded by government, central government, state government, and sponsorship banks. So sponsorship banks are any public sector banks which can fund RRBs at any point of given time. Okay, so 50% fund would be from central government, 50% stock will be on the name of central government, 15% funding, or say 15% shareholders are state government, and 35% are sponsored banks. This could be any public bank who wish to, provide an assistance in terms of finance for RRBs. Why the structure is created? It is because the RRB's functioning is based on non-profit oriented. Okay, these banks have created in the view or with the purpose of assisting the poorer section of section of people in our India, or say our country. Okay, so what happens here is, see here, as the RRBs have created on the basis of non-profit organizations. So here, while lending the loans to the poorer sections, many barriers were getting relieved. So now any commercial bank, what if we are lending loan to them, we have lots of procedures, right? So we need a security, we need we need something for the amount what we are lending, we need security for that. But every system or every regulations were ruled out for RRBs. If they don't have the security, still the banks were giving the loans. That's what the guidance were given by the government to the RRBs. So any issues with respect to poorer section, if they come up with the loan, they have to lend without any documentations. There was no more concentration on documentation, security, safety with respect to the loan lended by bank to the rural people. So here, so you see, when we are lending more than what we have, so automatically the functioning of RRBs was much more difficult. So that's the reason the capital structure made by in this way, where the basic purpose is only to serve the people, or give the financial assistance who are you know in the rural regions, who want to develop themselves, who want to contribute themselves in terms of agriculture field. So that's the reason they were not ready to compromise with that system. They wanted whatever the loss as banks they are undergoing. See, as they are not non-profit seeking banks, so when people or when public knew the functioning of RRBs, so then the in terms of deposits in these banks were started reducing during the functioning of RRBs. So when you have less in terms of deposits, so automatically it affects on your lending perspective also. So what happens? This created an imbalance in terms of the functionings of RRBs. So somewhere these banks went into a loss. So that is how the functioning were the capital structure were created in order to maintain the functioning of RRBs. So okay, this was all about the creation, the existence of RRBs and the capital structure of RRBs. So